Hello fellow YouTubers, I'm Cassandra Joy and welcome to a new series called Chats with Cass. This is going to be a sit-down type of format where I pick a topic and I chat about it. I asked you all some of your opinions on what you would like me to discuss in these kind of videos, so I have a whole list of things to pull from week to week. But for today, to start this brand new series, I thought we would chat about books, specifically what's on my TBR shelf. Whether it be coffee or tea or hot chocolate, whatever your drink of choice is, just make sure it's cozy and let's get chatting. For anybody who's curious, I'm using my sarcasm mug today. If you're new to the channel and don't know, hi, I'm Cass and my first language is sarcasm. My second language is English. The joke never gets old. I recently saw this reel on Instagram that talked about the difference between a book dragon and a bookworm. And apparently a bookworm is someone who reads books. They buy them to read them. A book dragon is someone who just hoards them, collects them. Whether they read them or not is entirely besides the point. I'm a bookworm. I don't collect books ad nauseum. I read them or rent them or buy them for cheap, and if I really love them, they earn a place on my shelf. I live in a very small apartment-like loft, so I don't have a lot of space to work with, which meant I had to get creative on what I keep and what I don't. Books being a huge one. I can't tell you how many book purges I went through to get my collection to fit into the singular bookshelf that I own. Whether you're a book dragon or a bookworm, sometimes the books you buy can get forgotten about or lost in the chaos of your bookshelf. I was finding that even though I was buying books, I couldn't remember which ones I had read and which ones I hadn't, and so the cycle of buying books and not reading them was continuing, which is not good for someone who lives in a very teeny tiny home like me. So I decided to make a TBR shelf on the side table right next to my couch, so whenever I would sit down on my couch to look at my phone and doom scroll or pick up my TV remote and watch YouTube, I would notice, oh hey, look at all these books just sitting here waiting to be read. Maybe you should read them. This little TBR shelf has actually been a really big lifesaver as far as my reading habits go, because it, one, reminds me to read, and two, shows me when I can buy books and when I cannot. I've made this little rule for myself that if my TBR shelf is full, I am on a book ban until I go through it. It's a very annoying rule, I won't lie, and I only have myself to blame. Let me know when you're done squeaking the door. Hey, that's mean.
Now I'm done. Got it out of my system.
Good. My YouTube audience thanks you. Since so many of you love when I chat about books, I thought I would start off this first episode of Chats with Cass chatting about all the books that are currently in my TBR list on my TBR shelf. I will say, as an extra little tip, I just before filming this decided to go through and weed out the books that I was actively avoiding. I had picked them and thought they sounded interesting, had read a few chapters even, and just wasn't picking them up again. I took that as a sign to say, you're not interested. You really don't feel this soul deep urge to read them. Just give them away. Give them to someone else who will enjoy them. So I have a little pile of discarded TBR books that I feel no guilt getting rid of, because I would far rather not bog up my TBR list, which is already backed up to the back 40 as it is, and make room for books that I actually want to read. You probably already knew that tip, but maybe you just needed someone to give you permission. I give you permission. Go through your TBR list, weed out the stuff that you don't actually want to read. It'll make both of our hearts very happy. Some of these books I'm waiting for the right season to read them. I don't know about you, but I am a big themed books kind of reader. So this one, for instance, is called To Kill a Kingdom, and it's all about mermaids. It's by Alexander Christo, and the tagline says, "A princess must have her prince." This obviously is very beach themed, summer themed, warm weather themed. So even though I read a few chapters and enjoyed it, I'm kind of holding off on finishing it until the summer comes around again, because I think I'll enjoy it that much more. For all of these books, I'll read the back summary for you, because I think that will do a far better job explaining what they're about than I could. And that way you can kind of get an idea of what it's about and decide if it's something you want to add to your TBR list. Sorry if I'm adding books to your already endless list of things to read. Sorry, not sorry. Princess Lyra is siren royalty and the most lethal of them all. With the hearts of 17 princes in her collection, she is revered across the sea, until a twist of fate forces her to kill one of her own. To punish her daughter, the Sea Queen transforms Lyra into the one thing sirens loathe most: a human. Robbed of her song, Lyra has until the winter solstice to deliver Prince Elian's heart to the Sea Queen or remain a human forever. The ocean is the only place Prince Elian calls home. Even though he is heir to the most powerful kingdom in the world, hunting sirens is more than an unsavory hobby. It's his calling. When he rescues a drowning woman in the ocean, she's more than what she appears. She promises to help him find the key to destroying all of siren kind for good, but can he trust her? And just how many deals will Elian have to broker to eliminate humankind's greatest enemy? For anyone who doesn't know, my favorite Disney princess from childhood up to now is still, forever and always, Ariel, the Little Mermaid. If the fact that I love and dye my hair red for just that reason wasn't clear enough. This is right up my alley. I love a good sea creature to human romance. I love a good enemies to lovers trope. This is one of those perfect beach read kind of books. It engages you in the story from the very first line, which reads, "I have a heart for every year I've been alive." I mean, I have read very few better openers than that. Very excited to read this when summer comes around again. Next book is called The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This is a New York Times bestseller. I've seen this everywhere on BookTube or Instabook, whatever you want to call it. You can see I did read some of it in the fall and then just got distracted with other books, but this is one I really do want to return to because I liked the premise of it. Now, when I bought this, I had zero idea that apparently this is basically a fan fiction of Kylo Ren and Rey from the new Star Wars movies that I do not accept or recognize as true lore. As someone who grew up on Star Wars and has very strong opinions about how they've changed everything, I don't recognize those movies as true canon. No, they don't count. But for any of you out there who do love those movies and love the Kylo Ren Rey love story, this is apparently a fan fiction for just that. Names are changed, descriptions are similar, setting is totally different. Let me read the back. When a fake relationship between scientists meet the irresistible force of attraction, it throws one woman's carefully calculated theories on love into chaos. As a third-year PhD candidate, Olive Smith doesn't believe in lasting romantic relationships, but her best friend does, and that's what got her into this situation. Convincing Anne that Olive is dating and well on her way to a happily ever after was always going to take more than hand-wavy Jedi mind tricks. Oh, I see what they did there. See, when I read this, I didn't know about the fanfic thing. That would have been such a funny little Easter egg. Sorry, continuing. Scientists require proof. So like any self-respecting biologist, Olive panics and kisses the first man she sees. That man is none other than Adam Carlson, a young hotshot professor and well-known, it has another word here, but we'll just say jerk. Which is why Olive is positively floored when Stanford's reigning lab tyrant agrees to keep her charade a secret and be her fake boyfriend. And when a big science conference goes haywire, putting Olive's career on the Bunsen burner, Adam surprises her again with his unyielding support and even more unyielding six-pack abs. Suddenly, their little experiment feels dangerously close to combustion, and Olive discovers that the only thing more complicated than a hypothesis on love is putting her own heart under the microscope. Obviously, I haven't finished it, but I have heard that there is a spice level to this. I can't give you a hot pepper rating because I haven't read it myself, but I'm pretty sure it's open door, and people have had mixed feelings about that. Maybe proceed with caution if that's not your thing. It really does annoy me though that a lot of really good books plot-wise are so heavy with the spice. Like, I don't mind a little spice. I don't mind a little something. If it's like a 5 hot pepper rating, that's a lot. And it's just so frustrating when the plot is so good other than that. But that's just how books are written nowadays, I think, and it's just something we're all gonna have to, I was gonna say fast forward, but that's a VHS reference, not a book reference. The next book on my shelf is called Book Lovers by Emily Henry. Isn't this the same author who wrote Beach Read? Yes, it is, and People We Meet on Vacation. People seem to really love her books, which is why this sounded so cool. It's about people who love books, so obviously I felt instantly connected to the characters. The tagline is, one summer, two rivals, a plot twist they didn't see coming. Nora Stevens' life is books. She reads them all, and she is not that type of heroine. Not the plucky one, not the laid-back dream girl, and especially not the sweetheart. In fact, the only people Nora is a heroine for are her clients, for whom she lands enormous deals as a cutthroat literary agent, and her beloved little sister Libby, which is why she agrees to go to Sunshine Falls, North Carolina for the month of August when Libby begs her for for a sister's trip away, with visions of a small town transformation for Nora, who she's convinced needs to become the heroine in her own story. But instead of picnics in meadows or run-ins with a handsome country doctor or bulging four-armed bartenders, Nora keeps bumping into Charlie Lastra, a bookish, brooding editor from back in the city. It would be a meet cute, if not for the fact that they've met many times, and it's never been cute. If Nora knows she's not an ideal heroine, Charlie knows he's nobody's hero. But as they are thrown together again and again in a series of coincidences no editor worth their salt would allow, that part made me laugh when I read it, what they discover might just unravel the carefully crafted stories they've written about themselves. I just really love the idea of two bookworms from two separate sides of the book world falling in love, not only over their love of reading, but also of each other. That just sounded like the coolest story to me, and the first few pages are so tongue-in-cheek funny. To start the book off, the main character starts making fun of Hallmarky kind of plots. It's always the small town girl who gets the brooding city boy, and she's just so sick of that plot line. It just really made me chuckle reading it, so I'm very excited to keep reading that. This book has been on my TBR list for a bit, and it's actually by a friend of mine named Lori Langdon. I believe this was the first book she ever wrote. Alongside her friend Carrie Corp, they wrote this series together. This is called Doon, and it takes place in Ireland, I believe, or Scotland, one of the two. Scotland, okay. It has magic bridges. It apparently has enchanted jewelry and handsome Scottish men that hold a shroud of mystery around them. For anybody who doesn't know, I traveled to Ireland many moons ago and have been bitten by the travel bug and besotted with the idea of visiting Europe again, ASAP. But until I can afford to do so, books like these are the way I make do. Let me read the back. Veronica doesn't think she's going crazy, but why can't anyone else see the mysterious blonde boy who keeps popping up wherever she goes? When her best friend McKenna invites her to spend the summer in Scotland, Veronica jumps at the opportunity to leave her complicated life behind for a few months. I mean, who wouldn't? But the Scottish countryside holds other plans. Not only has the imaginary kilted boy followed her to Alloway, she and McKenna uncover a strange set of rings and a very unnerving letter from McKenna's great aunt. And when the girls test the instructions Aunt Gracie left behind, they find themselves transported to a land that defies explanation. Ooh. Back to the whole finding magical portals thing that I was obsessed with as a child. This is right up my street. Doon seems like a real-life fairy tale, complete with one prince who has eyes for McKenna and another who looks suspiciously like the boy from Veronica's daydreams. But Doon has a dark underbelly as well. The two girls could have everything they've longed for, or they could end up breaking an enchantment and find themselves trapped in a world that has become a nightmare. This just sounds so good. This gives me all the Narnia vibes, but the Scottish version, and I'm all about it. The next book is for all of my Pride and Prejudice, Emma, Sense and Sensibility fans out there. This is called Mrs. Budley Falls from Grace, a novel of Regency England by Marion Chesney. This is apparently the third volume, so I'm guessing it's a series. I just found this at a secondhand bookstore and it looked interesting, so let me read the inside cover for you. By the way, I straightened my hair, which I never do, so my hands are continually just running through my hair. I apologize if that's annoying to anyone. It just feels so silky. Don't pretend you haven't done it too. I know better. Of the 5 remaining members of the Tom, this sounds very Bridgerton, doesn't it? Who were owners of the Poor Relation Hotel in Bond Street, Mrs. Budley was the one least suited to their rackety life. Despite many setbacks, they had all kept the hotel afloat with a combination of good luck, good management, and thievery. Before, when funds were low, one of them had gone on a thieving expedition. Now money was low again and they had drawn straws, and Mrs. Budley had drawn the short one. Eliza Budley is a beautiful widow whose husband gambled away his fortune. Lady Fortescue reminds the others that, to be fair, Mrs. Budley has no relatives on whom she can call. Gentle Mrs. Budley thinks she has escaped her fate until Sir Philip comes up with a plan. He has heard that the elderly Marquis of Peterhouse is senile, a widower extremely rich and unlikely to remember whether Mrs. Budley is a relative or not. So off Mrs. Budley goes to the bleak castle where the Marquis turns out to be not so old, hardly senile, and in fact, quite handsome. The lovable characters from the Poor Relation Hotel return in the latest sparkling and adventurous Regency from Marion Chesney. This just gives me all of the Elizabeth Mr. Darcy vibes, and I'm all for it. Add in a bit of Oliver Twist thievery. You've got me. I'm sold. Let's read it. The next book is called For the Throne by Hannah Witten. I can't remember what vlog it was, but I gave an in-depth review on For the Wolf, the first book in this duology. That book was by far the best fantasy fairy tale retelling I've ever read. So good. I loved every bit of it, which is why I've been putting off reading the sequel because I'm terrified. I don't know why. There's no reason I should be terrified, but part of me is hesitant because I'm worried the second book won't be as good as the first, because it doesn't take place in the first girl's perspective. It takes place in the sister. So let me explain the plot really quick. The first book is about a girl named Rudaris. There's an old adage that says second daughters are for the wolf and the wolf is for the wilder wood. It's obviously a loose retelling on Red Riding Hood and the Wolf, but by loose I mean very. Anything recognizable to the fairy tale stops at the names. The plot is wholly unique, which I loved. Second daughters to the royal line are always sacrificed to the wilder woods and the wolf that protects them. Rudaris has grown up believing that the wolf is this big, bad, horrible thing, and turns out he's just a brooding, human-ish guy with magic forest abilities who annoys her at first until she realizes that he's trying to be standoffish and distant to keep her safe. He doesn't want her to get hurt, which just my heart. Through a series of events, she gains a sliver of the Wilder Woods magic, but if she were to let it overtake her completely, it would kill her. And that's why Aemon, the wolf, is trying so hard to keep her safe, trying so hard to keep her from using that magic, basically trying to protect her from a wood that they're in to keep her alive. It's a whirlwind of an ending, but a happy one. And this is the sequel, all about Rudaris's twin sister. The tagline reads, "The second daughter is for the wolf, the first daughter is for the throne." The sister's name is Nevera, or Neve for short. Throughout the first book, she is trying her hardest to rescue Red from the Wilderwood. She doesn't realize that Red actually wants to stay, that she's actually safe as long as she's with Aemon. Neve has no idea about that, so she makes some deals with some not so good people to try to save her sister, who doesn't actually need saving, which is all sorts of frustrating when Neve finally gets Red back into her clutches and Red is like, "Let me go, I want to go back." Not a pretty fight, that one. Let me read the inside cover for you. Red and the wolf have finally contained the threat of the Five Kings, but at a steep cost. Red's beloved sister Neve, the first daughter, is lost in the Shadowlands, an inverted kingdom where the vicious gods of legend have been trapped for centuries, and the Five Kings have slowly been gaining control. But Neve has an ally, though it's one she'd rather never have to speak to again, the rogue king Salmir. Salmir wants to bring an end to the Shadowlands, and he believes helping Neve may be the key to its destruction. But to do that, they will both have to journey across a dangerous landscape in order to find the mysterious heart tree and finally claim the god's dark, twisted powers for themselves. Salmir is the main villain in the first book, and you do not like him. When I read it, I didn't feel like there was any redeeming quality to this man, but somehow he's now supposed to be the love interest of Neve. That also makes me a little nervous, like, okay, what are you gonna do to make me like this person? Because as frustrating as Neve was in not listening to Red and what Red wanted to stay in the woods, I do love that she was such a protective sister and really trying to do the right thing despite making all the wrong choices to do that. I want her to be safe. I want her little heart to be protected, and Salmir is not the nicest. I'm thinking this also might be an enemies to lovers kind of trope, which if done right could be very good. So I'm hesitant to read it only because the first one was so good and I want this to meet the same expectations that I've built. So I will read this at some point. I'm just waiting for the right moment. We've gotten to the middle, guys. Whew, we're halfway there. This book is called All This Time by Nikki Daughtry and Rachel Lippincott. Apparently they are the authors of 5 Feet Apart, which was turned into a movie, I believe, and everyone seemed to like, which I haven't seen. So if you've seen it, let me know if it's good. No spoilers though. The inside cover reads, "Can you find true love after losing everything?" Kyle and Kimberly are the perfect couple. At least, that's what Kyle's always thought. But when Kimberly drops a bomb on their relationship on the night of their graduation party, Kyle's entire world upends, literally. Their car crashes, and when he wakes up, Kyle has a brain injury. Kimberly is dead, and no one in his life could possibly understand, until Marley. Marley is suffering from her own loss, a loss she thinks was her fault. And when Marley's and Kyle's paths cross, Kyle sees in Marley all the unspoken things he's feeling. As Kyle and Marley slowly work to heal each other's wounds, their feelings for each other grow stronger. But Kyle can't shake the sense that he's headed for another crashing moment that will blow up his life as soon as he started to put it back together. And he's right. I'm very excited for this. I hope it's not too sad. I hope it's a happy ending, because I don't like sad endings. The next book is called A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. I actually didn't know that it was a book series until I watched the TV show. I'm taking my time with this book, not really rushing through it. I'm really trying to just enjoy it at my leisure. I've just started the 2nd season, and I think there are 3 seasons total, so I haven't finished the TV series yet, but the first season, so good. I don't want to compare this to Twilight in any way, shape, or form because it is not even remotely the same thing. But if you wanted to call this Twilight for grown-ups, I feel like that would be a decent description. There are no sparkly vampires. Sorry to disappoint if that's what you were thinking, but the vampires in here are so much better. Basically, in this world, there are 3 kinds of creatures that are other than humans. There are vampires, there are witches, and there are daemons, or in the show they call them demons. For any of you who are really sensitive to like demonic things, it is not that. That's just what they're called. It has nothing to do with anything demonic, I promise. Vampires, self-explanatory. Witches, pretty self-explanatory. Demons, they are actually really artistic, feverishly so, to the point where they get so caught up in their creativity and their artistic outpouring that they're described as characters who burn bright, but for a short time. So they're not great at handling money or being smart with their lives, other than the fact that they seem to garner fame really easily through their creative endeavors, but it's short-lived always. Diana Bishop is a witch who has never wanted anything to do with her magic, which poses a problem when danger starts to follow her after she finds this book that everybody wants. Vampires want it, demons want it, witches want it, and all of these different creatures are pretty much at odds with each other. There are very, very few exceptions to that rule. None of them really interact with each other. They're always at odds. So the fact that they are starting to band together and form alliances just to get this book, that says a lot about Diana and about the book. Problem is, Diana seems to be the only person who can summon the book from its hiding place, so it was hidden by someone, we don't know who. And Diana, not knowing it was hidden, just asked for the book. She needed it for her research. She was able to pull it out of the library. When she sent it back into the stacks, no one else could get it. No one else could find it. It's lost. So obviously everyone is very interested in Diana, and danger lurks at every corner. And for a witch who doesn't want to use her magic in any way, that's a problem. So Matthew Claremont, the very charming, handsome vampire, finds himself her protector. Through this, they start to create a bond. You can probably tell where this is going. And it's just the coolest story. There are so many real historical places like Oxford University that are described, and it feels like you're actually there. And for someone who wants to explore Europe and see Oxford itself for the first time, this was a really cool way to travel without spending any money. You figure out why Diana doesn't want to use her powers. You figure out what happened to her parents who were mysteriously murdered. You figure out why the book is so important to all these different creatures and how far they're willing to go to get it back. Highly recommend the TV show. Highly recommend this book. There is a little bit of spice in it. It's been a while since I've read it, so I'm trying to remember. I'll give it a, just for safety, 3 hot peppers out of 5 rating. So there's a little bit of spice, but it's not overwhelmingly so. It's not the main focus of the book. There's so much more plot outside of just that, which I appreciate. I don't mind it thrown in, but I don't like it being like the forefront, you know? Such a good story. It'll keep you reading until the end. Next book is called The Lake House by Kate Morton. This was a secondhand find as well. I'd never heard of it before, but the plot sounded really intriguing. Another mystery, and it spans quite a few years, so something happens in the past and someone from the present decides to dig up this mystery and figure out how to solve it. So the inside cover reads, on a summer evening in 1933, Eleanor and Anthony Edivane's country house in Cornwall stands ready for a grand summer party to begin. Before the night is over, this idyllic refuge will find itself the backdrop to a tragedy and the birthplace of a terrible secret. Alice Edivane, 16 years old and a budding writer, is thrilled that her parents' glittering Midsummer Eve party is taking place just as she has fallen hopelessly in love for the first time, albeit with someone of whom Eleanor would never approve. But her happiness is short-lived when it is discovered that her adored 11-month-old brother Theo has vanished from his crib and is nowhere to be found. After months of fruitless searching, the devastated Edivane family leaves their beloved lakeside estate for London. They will never return. 70 years later, Detective Constable Sadie Sparrow is visiting Cornwall when she stumbles upon the once proud Edivane mansion, now an overgrown ruin. Her natural curiosity is piqued when she learns the story of a baby boy who disappeared from the house without a trace, and she decides to seek answers from someone who was there all those years ago. Alice Edivane is now a formidably elderly woman living in London who has enjoyed a long and successful career as a novelist, her days as neatly plotted as the best-selling detective stories that made her famous. But then Sadie Sparrow arrives at her door asking questions about the past, resurrecting the complex tangle of secrets Alice has spent her life trying to escape. What Sadie discovers with Alice's help is an astonishing tale of secrets kept and suspicions withheld, of passionate love and bitter regret, and of an unseen sacrifice that profoundly altered a family's destiny. This just sounded so cool. I mean, it's It's not a small book, it's pretty hefty, so I would have to really dedicate myself to reading it. But the story just intrigued me. It was a mystery that I kind of wanted to solve too, so I will definitely save this for a cozy winter eve that calls for an engaging mystery. The next book is called Queen of Thieves by B.Z. Marsh. This is actually my pick for my Book of the Month subscription. I picked 2 because I couldn't narrow it down, this being one of them. The inside reads, Gangland was a man's world. The women knew different. London, 1946. The city struggles to rebuild itself after the devastation of the Blitz. Alice Diamond, the Queen of Thieves, rules over her all-female gang with a bejeweled fist. Her hoisters are expert shoplifters scourging London's upscale boutiques and department stores, but their lucrative business always carries the threat of violence. Alice has been known to use her heavy rows of diamond rings like brass knuckles. Nell is a teenager from the slums, hiding a pregnancy and facing a desperately uncertain future when Alice takes her under her wing. Soon, Nell is experiencing all the dangers and glamorous trappings of this underworld existence. Alice wants Nell to be a useful weapon, but Nell has a hidden agenda and shouldn't be underestimated. As Nell embraces the spoils of crime and the seedy underbelly of London, will she manage to carve out her own path to power and riches? Might she even crown herself the Queen of Thieves? This book just sounded so good. I think it gave me Oliver Twist vibes, which I'm all about. Can't really say much more than that since I haven't read it, but it sounded very intriguing. Last but not least, we have Firefly, Life Signs, an original novel by James Lovegrove. I apologize in advance because my nerd is gonna show real hard, but I love Firefly. I love that TV show. It's so good. I was so devastated to find out that they only did 1 season because they aired it in the wrong order and nobody could figure out what the story was about. It was the networking's fault. It had nothing to do with the show. The show was not lacking in any way. It was the stupid network. So they got canceled after 1 season, which is so gut-wrenching, but they have books, which makes up for it. This is written exactly like the show. Everyone speaks the same way in that southern kind of dialect, but without the southern accent. Let me see if I can find a good example. You know you got one of them upside down faces, huh? An upside down face. You know what I mean. Don't reckon I do. Bald on top, neck beard below. Stand on your head, it'd look like your face was the right way up. You trying to be funny? Merely tender in an observation. Of course, from my current perspective, your face is the right way up. You're about to die. I really don't think this is the time to be making wisecracks. Do you see what I mean? It's like, it's kind of that southern dialect, but there's no southern accent, at least according to the actors on the show who played these characters. Okay, let me back up. For anybody who doesn't know what Firefly is, I can't compare it to Star Wars or Star Trek. I'm not a Star Trekian, by the way. If I say this, it's gonna turn all of you off for watching it. It's about space cowboys. And all of you clicked off the video. This is obviously taking place in the future. Earth has been destroyed. Humans have just eradicated all of the things that make Earth inhabitable. So other planets around Earth have been transformed to house life. Some were transformed really well, others were transformed poorly, which means some planets are just ice planets and you live in perpetual snow like you're in the Arctic all the time. Others have different climates, different levels of poverty and riches. So the merry band of space cowboys you find flying around space are led by Malcolm Reynolds. He is a space captain with a lovely crew of very humorous people and is not always on the up and up. He has a decent moral compass as far as how to treat people and what is right and wrong, except for thieving and working for people who have less reputable reputations. So it's all sorts of fun. It takes place in a futuristic atmosphere and the characters honestly just made the show. The dialogue is written to perfection in this book and I'm about this far in, so I've got a ways to go, but so good. If this is a series, I cannot wait to dig up more. And those are all of the books I have on my TBR shelf. Hope that was interesting for you for this first chatty episode. Hopefully it gave you some ideas on new books to add to your TBR list. And honestly, if you want to get through books that you just keep forgetting are there, make a little shelf right next to your couch. It makes a world of difference. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to comment down below any other topics you would like me to discuss in this brand new series. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you never miss a future video from me, and I will see you in the next one. Love you guys. Mwah. Bye.